I am by myself today because we're talking about family law issues, and that's something that I handle here with MyVirtual.Lawyer in Arkansas. So today we're talking our Legal Talk Tuesdays. Let me turn off my phone. Did not realize it was on. Today for Legal Talk Tuesday, we're going to be talking about holiday custody questions and surprises that you can avoid. We're leading up to the big holidays for a lot of people, Christmas, Hanukkah, that kind of thing. And we're going to talk about a subject near and dear to my heart, as you all know, who listen to us, children. So if you're divorced, separated, or you just have children with an ex, we're going to talk about how to avoid those holiday custody and visitation surprises. So 3 things to look for and be aware of during the holidays is what we're going to kind of focus on. Number 1 is, what does your custody agreement look like? Do you have something in place with the courts? If you don't, you should. It's a way to protect yourself, your ex, your children, really, honestly, from anything that could go wrong in the future or the present. And so if you don't have anything in place with the courts, you need to kind of get that. If you do have something in place with the courts, whether it's a parenting plan in your divorce documents, a custody and visitation agreement, read it again now. Read it. If you have any questions about the wording of it or what it means, reach out to your attorney that you used to file them. Reach out to another attorney if that attorney is not available, but familiarize yourself with that wording and ask for clarification if you have questions about it. It's best to kind of know your custody agreements really, really well. They should be very detailed. I get a lot of times, I get somebody who says, we'll just work it out amongst ourselves. And I don't like to draft that if I'm the one who's doing your documents, because when you leave things up in the air, especially when the children are very young, things that come up in the future that can be avoided if you have just something in place. It's just easier to protect yourself on the front end. You can always make changes later or make alternate agreements between the co-parents, but having something in place is really important. And knowing what it says, knowing kind of all the details of what holiday visitation and things like that looks like, that's a very important thing as well. So we're going to talk about some common schedules for holiday custody. The first one is alternating holidays. This is probably the most common way that custody is arranged for holidays. For example, one parent gets the children during Christmas this year, the other parent gets the kids during Christmas next year. Same thing with other holidays like Thanksgiving, Easter, whatever it might be. So alternating holidays is one thing that is very common when you're drafting up custody agreements, if you're looking at that in your actual court documents. Number 2 is splitting holidays. Split the day itself in half. If you live close to your co-parent, this can be an easy solution for both parents to have the kids on important days. Christmas, for example, one parent could have the children overnight on Christmas Eve until maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Christmas Day, and then the other parent gets them for the rest of the holiday. This can be alternated if you want. So this year it's one way, next year it reverses. So the other parent has Christmas Eve and overnight. So that way, if they want to have that surprise wake up, for Santa and that kind of thing, you both get to experience that in different years. But splitting the holiday itself is a very common thing if you live close to the co-parent. If you live far away, that's obviously not as much of an option. Number 3 is something that I did actually as a divorced kid, double holidays. My parents lived in different states and they got divorced when we were all under the age of 10. My mother had primary custody, so we would celebrate Christmas with my mom and her family. And then either before or after that celebration, we would celebrate Christmas with my dad and his family. Again, different states. We were lucky that both of their parents, their families, for most of my young life lived in the same state. Neither of us really lived in that state for very long, but that's an option for you. And it's kind of good for the kids. It can be good for the kids because you've got double the presents, double the celebration, double the fun. And so that can be something that can be a positive for the kids because they're having the experience twice. Another option is fixed holidays. So for example, this works with people of different religious faiths. If one parent is Jewish and the other is Christian or not religious at all, you can easily share custodies during the holidays that are important to each of the parent to celebrate. So if you have a Jewish parent, they can have the kids for important Hanukkah, those types of holidays. If you have the other parent who celebrates Christmas, then there's not even really any kind of conflicting issue at that point, which is really nice. So those are just some of the options that you might see in your parenting plan. And if you don't have one in place with the court system, then those are some options that you should look at in order to get something in place with the courts. Number 2, for 3 ways to avoid these surprise issues with custody when you're coming up to the holidays, is number 2 is be courteous and flexible. Some people like to travel during the holidays, for example. If you or your co-parent are those types of people, it's important to remember to be courteous and flexible. Custody agreements are not necessarily set in stone, and they're never really intended to not allow changes to the actual visitation or custody if both parents agree. So if your co-parent maybe wants to take the kids on a trip to Branson or their parents' house in Oklahoma, I say that because that's where we tended to go, then figure out the details, have a conversation. Does that mean that you get extra days on the front or back end of that holiday? It's really important to kind of have that conversation, be flexible with your co-parent, because keep in mind the kids are the most important thing and you don't want to be fighting about things. Which leads me to talk about it's very important to not be spiteful in these situations. Spite is an emotion that you're feeling against the other person, but you should not involve your children in those kinds of things. So if, for example, and I've said this before, if your ex cheated on you or you just don't like them for whatever reason, that does not mean that they're a bad parent. It's best for the children in most situations. There's always the exceptions. Everybody who watches regularly knows that I have dealt with domestic violence issues and things like that before, but it's best in most situations to have that time, that holiday time with both parents. So keep that in mind. And along those lines of keeping that in mind, that your children are the most important thing, not necessarily your feelings and your need for spite or revenge or, whatever it might be, punishing the other parent. Along those lines, number 3 is remember that your children are the most important thing in this whole situation. Listen to them. What do they want? Try to be a good co-parent. It's really not helping anyone, including your own emotional sanity, to live in that negativity and try to be spiteful or, have those negative feelings. If you have them, that's fine, but don't involve your children in it. So we're coming up to a holiday season. We've just passed Thanksgiving, where we gave thanks for things. We talked about being grateful and having conversations at the dinner table about estates and wills and things like that. But it's also important to keep your children in mind when you're talking about having these visitations with, or having these custody arrangements with your co-parent. Your children are the most important thing. And in most situations, it's very important to have to let the children have good quality time with both parents. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, just a little bit of information about how to avoid custody issues and surprises during the holiday season. So remember, number 1 is to read the details of your parenting plan or your custody agreement. If you have questions about it, contact an attorney. There are different, I gave you some options of different ways that visitations and custody look like in a court document. Number 2 is be courteous and respectful and be flexible. There are always going to be situations that come up, and it's important to be flexible with whatever the situation is. And number 3 is always keep your children in the forefront of your mind. Just because you don't like your ex doesn't mean that they're a bad parent. And it's very important for your children to have time with both parents during these special times of year, this holiday time. So thank you so much for joining me today. And Brooke's going to be back with us next week, same time, same place, and we're going to be back on Tuesday of next week, which I can't even think about what that date is, but it'll be next Tuesday at 11:30. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Here in Central Arkansas, it's nice and cold and dreary outside, so it's super perfect for everyone's, happiness and everything. So have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.